The classroom smelled of dry marker ink and old floor wax, a place where dreams were supposed to take root. Yet on that gray October morning, laughter drowned out the air like a cruel drumbeat. Jordan Hayes, 17 years old with worn-out sneakers and a thrift store hoodie, stood at the front of the room. His teacher, Ms. Carter, had asked every student to share their future career goals for the yearbook video. One by one, classmates named things that felt ordinary: nurse, mechanic, engineer, teacher. When Jordan's turn came, he lifted his chin, a flicker of nervous hope in his eyes, and said the words that would ignite the storm. "I'm going to be a CEO. Not just any CEO. I'm going to build a company that changes the world." For a moment, silence hung in the room. Then Miss Carter's lips curled into a sneer. She threw her head back and laughed loudly enough to rattle the windows. The sound wasn't just laughter, it was a public declaration that his dream was a joke. Students followed her lead, chuckles and whispers rippling through the rows like poison. "A CEO?" she scoffed, crossing her arms. "Jordan, you can barely pass algebra. CEOs aren't boys from broken homes who show up late to class and doodle in their notebooks. Be realistic. Someone has to flip burgers too." The words hit like stones. Jordan's throat tightened, but he didn't flinch. He just looked at her, silent, his knuckles white as he gripped the paper in his hand. His calmness made her angrier. She wanted him embarrassed, crushed, humiliated. She wanted to erase the audacity that lived in his voice. "Oh, wait, I know," she said suddenly, reaching into a drawer. With a theatrical flourish, she pulled out a plastic toy crown left over from a pep rally. She placed it on his head with a smirk. "All hail King Jordan, ruler of impossible dreams." The classroom erupted. Phones appeared instantly, screens glowing as laughter turned into recording. Someone shouted, "Smile, Your Majesty!" Another boy bent forward in mock servitude. The videos captured it all, his still face, the golden crown tilted awkwardly, the teacher laughing as though she'd delivered comedy gold. What none of them noticed was the way Jordan's jaw clenched, the way his eyes, dark and steady, locked onto a horizon none of them could see. Inside him something shifted. He wasn't broken by their laughter, he was carved sharper by it. When the bell rang, Ms. Carter waved him off with a dismissive flick of her hand. "Take the crown, Jordan. You'll need it for your fairy tale kingdom." He walked out without a word, crown in his backpack, humiliation burning in his chest. But humiliation, he decided, would not be the final word. The video spread online by nightfall. Edited, remixed, captioned. Jordan Hayes became a punchline. "CEO dreams Burger King reality," one caption sneered. Strangers mocked his hoodie, his quietness, his audacity. The crown became an emoji people spammed under his posts. For most kids, that would have been the end. But Jordan wasn't most kids. At home, in the dim light of his small bedroom, he replayed the clip again and again. Each laugh, each insult, each cruel word seared into his memory. He opened a worn notebook where he had scribbled ideas, apps, business models, visions no one believed in. He wrote one sentence at the top of a fresh page. "They will remember me for more than this." The months that followed weren't easy. College applications came back with rejections. Scholarships went to safer, shinier students. Jordan worked nights at a grocery store, stocking shelves while his classmates prepared for prom. The laughter followed him, on sidewalks and hallways, even in his own inbox. But with every mocking comment, his resolve hardened. He spent his paycheck on secondhand laptops, scavenged textbooks on coding, free online business lectures. While other teenagers scrolled through feeds, Jordan was teaching himself how to build websites, how to design apps, how to pitch ideas. He learned through failure: 10 failed websites, 5 rejected app ideas, countless sleepless nights. But each failure was data, each rejection a lesson. Ms. Carter saw none of it. To her, Jordan disappeared into obscurity, another dreamer eaten by reality. But in hidden corners of the internet, something was taking root. His projects began attracting small clients, local shops, nonprofits, churches needing websites. Word spread quietly. His designs were sleek, his code reliable. He charged little, often nothing at all, because for him it wasn't about money yet. It was about proving himself right. By 19, he had saved enough to incorporate his first company, Novatech Solutions. At first, it was just Jordan and a cracked-screen laptop working out of his mother's kitchen. He recruited two friends who believed in him, paying them with free meals and promises of shares that didn't yet exist. Together, they built platforms for small businesses, tools that allowed corner stores and barbershops to sell online, reaching customers beyond their block. The work caught attention. Investors laughed at his age, his background, his lack of pedigree. But small communities didn't laugh. They embraced him. Shop owners told neighbors, churches spread the word. And soon Novatech was more than a side hustle. It was a lifeline for hundreds of struggling families. Through it all, Jordan kept the toy crown on a shelf above his desk. A reminder, not of shame but of fuel. Every time exhaustion whispered that he should quit, he looked at it and remembered the sound of that classroom laughter. He would not stop until the crown meant victory. By 22, Novatech had contracts with regional banks and city governments. Journalists started calling him the boy who wouldn't quit. His face appeared in local news, then national outlets. Forbes placed him on their 30 under 30 list. Time magazine called him a visionary of the new economy. And still, when the cameras turned off, Jordan remembered the video. He remembered Ms. Carter's smirk. He remembered the voices that said impossible. So when his old high school reached out, asking if he would return as the keynote speaker for graduation, Jordan didn't hesitate. He said yes, not because he needed revenge, but because the crown, the laughter, the humiliation, none of it belonged to him anymore. It belonged to every student who had been told they were too poor, too black, too small to dream. The day of the ceremony, the gymnasium glowed with banners and balloons. Families filled the bleachers, students in caps and gowns lined the rows. At the side of the stage sat Ms. Carter, older now, her hair streaked with gray, but the same air of authority wrapped around her shoulders. She didn't yet know who the guest speaker was. She didn't yet know the past was walking back into her life. The principal's voice thundered through the microphone, announcing a distinguished alumnus, a groundbreaking entrepreneur, the CEO of Novatech Solutions. The crowd murmured with curiosity, phones already recording. Then, as Jordan Hayes stepped onto the stage in a tailored navy suit, silence fell like a curtain. For the first time in years, it was Ms. Carter's turn to feel her throat tighten. The crowd rose to its feet, applause thundering against the gym's rafters. Students who had never met him cheered like he was already a legend. Parents whispered his name with reverence. Cameras flashed, capturing the young black man who had been mocked, dismissed, humiliated, now standing in front of them as proof that the impossible could be done. Jordan adjusted the microphone. His voice, deep but steady, filled the room. "Good evening," he began, his eyes scanning the crowd. "Some of you might remember me, and if you don't, that's okay, because I remember you." The room quieted instantly. Ms. Carter shifted uncomfortably in her seat, her eyes narrowing as though trying to place him. But Jordan didn't look at her yet. His gaze was locked on the rows of graduates, each face filled with that mix of excitement and fear that comes with stepping into adulthood. Years ago, I stood in this very building and said something simple, that I wanted to be a CEO, that I wanted to build a company that could change lives. And do you know what happened? He paused, letting the silence stretch, the anticipation grow. People laughed. They said it was impossible. They said kids like me, kids who came from nothing, kids who didn't wear the right clothes, kids with single moms and late-night jobs, couldn't possibly sit at the head of the table. "They put a crown on my head and turned me into a joke!" Gasps rippled through the audience. Several students pulled out phones, already searching for the viral video that had haunted him years ago. Recognition dawned on faces across the gym. Whispers filled the bleachers like rustling leaves. Jordan reached into a small box on the podium. Slowly, deliberately, he pulled out the faded plastic crown. He held it up high, letting the overhead lights glint against the cheap plastic jewels. "Do you remember this?" he asked softly, his eyes finally locking onto Ms. Carter. Her face went pale. For the first time, her composure cracked. She shifted in her seat, lips parting in disbelief. "This crown was meant to humiliate me," Jordan continued. "It was meant to make me small, to remind me and everyone watching that I should know my place. But here's the thing about crowns. They don't lose their power because of who puts them on your head. They gain power because of the person who wears them. The crowd erupted in cheers. Students leapt to their feet, clapping, whistling, shouting his name. Ms. Carter's hands tightened on her program until the paper crumpled. Jordan set the crown gently on the podium, his voice steady and calm. To every student sitting here tonight, I want you to understand something. Your dream will be laughed at, not might be. Will be. The moment you step out of line, the moment you dare to want more than the world thinks you deserve, someone will laugh. They'll try to make you smaller so they can stay comfortable. But their laughter doesn't define you. Your vision does. Your work does. Your resilience does. The gym buzzed with electricity. Some students had tears in their eyes, their own quiet humiliations surfacing as they listened. Jordan's tone shifted softer now. I won't lie to you. The road from that moment to this one wasn't easy. I stocked grocery shelves. I ate instant noodles for months at a time. I failed more than I succeeded. But I never forgot the crown. I never forgot the laughter. And most importantly, I never forgot that silence, that calm inside me that said, they don't know who you are yet. But they will. His words hung in the air, heavy and electric. At the edge of the stage, Ms. Carter finally rose from her seat, her face flushed. She took a step forward as though to interject, but the principal placed a hand on her arm and shook his head. The audience wasn't hers anymore. Jordan leaned forward, his eyes sweeping across the graduates. You are sitting on dreams that the world is not ready for. Some of you will design cures. Some of you will create music that heals souls. Some of you will build companies, lead movements, change laws. And yes, some of you will fail. But failure doesn't mean the end. Failure means data. Failure means the lesson you need before the breakthrough. He let the words breathe, his eyes shining with quiet intensity. I stand here today not to say, look at me, I made it. I stand here to say, look at you, you can too. Don't let anyone write your story for you. Don't let anyone decide your crown is a joke. Because when black voices speak, when we refuse to be silenced, when we rise with our brilliance in spaces that doubted us, that's when the world changes. The gym roared with applause. Students pounded their hands against their chairs, parents stood to clap, and the noise was deafening. The camera crews, already recording for the local news, caught every frame. The young black CEO holding up the crown that had once been a symbol of humiliation, now transformed into a symbol of triumph. Ms. Carter sat frozen, her face pale. Her authority evaporated in the weight of the truth unfolding before her. She had tried to write his story as a cautionary tale, but Jordan had taken back the pen, and in that moment, surrounded by the voices of a new generation cheering his name, it became clear. This wasn't just his victory, it was theirs. The applause slowly settled, but the energy in the gym didn't fade. It shifted, becoming something heavier, more permanent, like a truth that couldn't be unspoken. Jordan stood tall at the podium, his crown glinting under the stage lights, his presence larger than the walls around him. Then, from the back of the gym, a voice called out, "Jordan!" What happened to Miss Carter after that? The question sliced through the air. Every head turned toward the speaker, a curious student, her hand still raised even as she shouted the question. Jordan smiled faintly. He glanced at Ms. Carter, who sat rigid, trying to appear unbothered, though her knuckles whitened against her program. "What happened to her?" he repeated, his voice calm but laced with something sharper. She kept teaching. She kept laughing at other students. She kept doing what she thought was safe, because no one held her accountable. Back then, no one wanted to hear a black boy complain about being mocked. They thought I should be grateful just to sit in the room. A hush swept through the audience. Ms. Carter shifted uncomfortably. Her lips pressed into a thin line. "But here's the difference," Jordan continued. "Today, I'm not a kid with no power. Today, I stand before you as someone who built something that matters. And with that comes responsibility. Responsibility to make sure that no student, ever again, has their dream turned into a punchline for the sake of a cheap laugh." His words echoed, heavy and deliberate. Ms. Carter's face turned crimson. For too long, Jordan pressed on. Black voices have been told to stay quiet, to be grateful, to accept crumbs and call it a feast. But when black voices speak, when we tell our truths, loudly, unapologetically, the world has no choice but to listen. Tonight you all listened. Tomorrow you carry this forward. The crowd thundered again, stomping feet, clapping hands, voices rising like a chant. Speak, speak, speak! Jordan stepped away from the podium, walking across the stage with a calm authority. He picked up the crown once more, turning it slowly in his hands. This was meant to silence me, but it became my fuel. And that's the message I want to leave you with. Let every insult, every doubt, every humiliation become fuel. Turn their laughter into your ladder, because the same people who laughed at you will one day sit in silence when you walk in the room. The audience rose again, the ovation now longer, fiercer, more emotional. Parents wiped tears. Students clutched their diplomas like weapons forged in fire. Ms. Carter sank lower in her seat, the weight of years pressing down on her. For the first time, she seemed to grasp the scale of what she had done, not just to Jordan, but to countless others whose voices she had dismissed. Jordan lifted the crown high one last time, then placed it not on his own head but on the podium. In plain sight of the graduates, this crown doesn't belong to me anymore, he said. It belongs to you. Every one of you who dares to dream bigger than the world thinks you deserve. Wear it proudly, wear it defiantly, wear it until no one dares to laugh at you again. The roar of approval was deafening. The gym shook with the sound of liberation. A chorus of black voices and allies rising together, declaring that they would not be silenced again. After the ceremony ended, lines of students crowded around him, shaking his hand, hugging him, asking for advice. The principal thanked him with tears in his eyes. Parents whispered their gratitude. And then, when the crowd finally thinned, Jordan stood face to face with Ms. Carter. She looked older now, her authority drained, her voice trembling. I didn't know, she stammered. I didn't realize what that moment meant. I thought it was just a joke. Jordan finished for her, his tone even but cold. She swallowed hard. Yes, a joke. I never imagined... Jordan studied her for a long moment, then shook his head. That's the problem. You never imagined what it felt like to sit where I sat, to walk where I walked, to dream the way I dreamed. You never imagined that your words could carry weight. But they did, and they almost crushed me. Her eyes filled with tears, but Jordan didn't soften. I don't need your apology, he said quietly, because this was never about you. This was about every student who comes after me. Make sure you never do it again. She nodded, silent, her tears spilling over. Jordan turned away, walking out of the gym as the evening air washed over him. The crown was still on the podium, gleaming under the lights. A reminder that symbols only have the power we give them. Outside, the graduates poured into the night, their voices echoing in the parking lot, carrying his message like a torch. The laughter that once haunted him was gone, replaced by a new sound, the sound of black voices speaking, rising, refusing to be silenced. And for Jordan, that was the real victory. Not the company, not the title, not the crown. The victory was knowing that his story had become more than a personal triumph. It had become a movement, a legacy, a declaration that no matter how loud the laughter, silence will always fall when black voices speak their truth.